Hurry up, 5 minutes. 5 minutos. Esta noche es muy caliente.
Hey, download your TikTok app today so you can have Chinese spyware in your house for free. You go down! Give me money!
Fucking future!
We're talking about a fat ass and everything, yeah.
I said loud ass. It's like I took a poop and it was one of those painful ones that brings a tear to your eye.
This is what we would expect from Donald Trump, the public facing, to say this is
Oh my God, are they getting concerned? I think they are. But that's okay. Just because there have been people that, according to the media, have been willing to perjure themselves, risking jail time if found to be speaking mistruths, of misinformation, because that's what the kids call it, misinformation, they could go to jail. Fall upon this petard of doom. Ask me about my wiener. Nana. That's rude. Okay, so the question is, what in the world... Oh, wait, where's my book? I got the new book. We gotta finish it all. There it is. It's underneath all this shit. Got it. Got him. So we're doing Chicken Cocker Chattanooga 111. Which is it, guys? What shall we shall? Oh. I could just do Bullet Rye. But I like opening new bottles. Oh, penis. 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 I mean... Daggum it, I know I broke some of the seal. This is why we can't have nice things, people. Because we don't have music playing or nothing. Man, and I really wanted to use my knife, make it all cowboy-like. But they probably would... Well, they wouldn't have had the seal, right? The safety seal to make sure your core squeezins hasn't been tampered with. That's enough. No, it's not. Yes, huh? Okay. What are we listening to finish up Slash's stuff? I'm tired of... I think I'm always going to get copyright stricken with YouTube. I know this one girl. She streams. I follow her channel, and she has full-on music videos playing in her background. Oh. I just don't get how she's monetized even. You know what, female, once again, when it comes to Twitch, son of a bitch, they're a bit on the simplish side. Yeah, you heard me, simplish. Them's the words I used. Oh. Let's see here. I'm just tired of the other thing. Hopefully this isn't super copyrighted. Probably is, but you know, at this point, why would I give a shit? I'm here for you guys. We got the book. I got the drink. I got the oh, that's what it is. You're right. You're right. I'm working on it. You've been working on it. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Little pupper. Don't you look at me like that. All judgy and shit. You guys can't see it, but she looking at me all super judgmental like. I would say it's okay, but sometimes she just looks into your soul. You know what I'm saying? And I realize it's just her face. I don't think she means to do that. I don't know. Maybe she does mean to do. Do you mean to do that? Are you the devil? She won't eat her food, but she'll eat a whole bunch of fucking dead cicadas in the yard. I'm sure she prefers the live ones, though. She lives for the hunt. I'm sure Slash appreciates me drinking whiskey and reading his book. Because of course he knows. There's no hashtags, no nothing. Like, I've never heard that man utter more than a couple sentences. He always seems so enigmatic. It's just a mystery. He's an enigma wrapped in a question mark, surrounded by a shroud of mystery. Turns out he was just too high to give a fuck. That's an admirable trait. Consistency. Not being high, but if being high is your consistent trait, then so be it. Ooh, let's see. Batch number 22H2R. 24R. Man, these numbers mean nothing to me. It means something. Straight bourbon whiskey. Yes, sir. Anyways. You know, I'm waiting till some of y'all filter in here. Besides, I don't have the sumbitch pulled up yet. So I'm pulling that up right now. Hey, which thing is that? No double jeopardy. Which amendment is that? Penis? Okay. Twitch. There we go. Apparently I'm live right now. Guys, nope. I'm live right now. Yeah, me neither. Maybe that's why nobody's here. Could be. We'll just chat. Oh. All of a sudden you didn't invite just cuz. You're probably here, but just in case. Yeah. Everybody gets one. You get an invite. You get an invite. Is that everybody? That's not everybody, but it's all the ones I feel like sending out. Yeah, your buddy. It's just me thinking out loud. Don't worry about it. I don't do it too often. Inside or outside. We just do. I am but a leaf on the wind. Oh, yeah, the double jeopardy. I mean, yeah. Because didn't Trump already get indicted for the whole January 6th biggest terrorist attack on U.S. soil? Oh, fuck. I mean, there's been verified, proven fucking voting tampering in the election, but yet he's being indicted on multiple counts of bullshit, which he's already been fucking tried for. I'm 95% certain he's already been tried for that shit. And they're like, yeah, nah, shut up. You're dumb. But apparently the dumb doesn't stop. I think the bidet group is a little bit concerned about their chances of winning. I'm like, dude, why are you guys concerned about winning? How about not having a president die in office from fucking old age and dementia? That'd be super cool. Ooh, that smells like damn paint thinner right there. Good paint thinner. Dog, are you judging me right now? We're having a good time. I guess he's just not going to update the viewers. That's fine. We don't need viewers. We just need to sit here, drink whiskey, read the book, and just ignore that number in the corner of the screen. You're doing this because you love to do it. I'm doing this so you guys can see this sweet dog. Sweet dog of mine. Okay, so where we left off was they're trying to audition singers for their band, and some VH1 reality show behind the scenes recording. They're like, hey, this is boring. We're going to cut off the funding for this. And then, of course, it being reality TV, they tried to play the angle of the most dramatic moments, even though there was next to no drama, according to Slash. But, you know, they really wanted Scott Whalen, but, you know, he was with Stone Temple Pilots. There's no possible way they could possibly get him. Anyways, among the professional singers we knew, Ian Astbury of The Cult came down to check out what we were doing off camera. Sebastian Bach was also a contender, but that was never really considered a possibility. We rehearsed with Sebastian for a while, and even had him come into the studio to put vocals on a few tracks. At the time, he was singing in a production of Jesus Christ Superstar, and it was great to see this whole new professional side of Sebastian. Nonetheless, it didn't work out. It sounded too much like the sum of our parts, not like anything new. It was Skid Roses. Honestly, I would listen to Skid Roses, but that's what... It's fine. I'd rather listen to that than the Buckethead Axl Guns N' Roses, but that's besides the point, penis. And throughout it all, Scott Whalen's name kept coming up. Everyone in the band knew him, one way or another, except for me. Dave had been in a band called Electric Love Hog that opened for STP, and Matt had been in rehab with Scott. Duff's wife, Susan, was friends with Scott's wife, Mary. I just thought he was a great singer, and he'd always been on my mind for this band. He was the one vocalist that I knew had the kind of voice that would serve what we were going to do. He had a John Lennon-ish quality, a little bit of Jim Morrison, and a touch of almost David Bowie. He was the best singer to come out in a long time, in my opinion. Well, that means something, Slash, because you come from a very musical background. Since everyone else knew him, I told Duff to call him up. He did, and he asked Scott if he'd like to hear some of our demos. Scott was into it, so we got 4 tracks together, got them recorded, and I brought them down personally to his apartment. At the time, he was living on Blackburn, ironically just a few doors down from where I'd lived with my dad for a while when I was a kid. That night, he was doing a show with STP, so I left the CD on his doorstep, and the rest of us waited eagerly for his call. A week later, he called us, and as positive as he was about the music and what he thought we were doing, he was honest about the fact that STP was still together. They were having their problems, but Scott was straightforward about the fact that he intended to stick it out and see where it was going. Listen, I said, I don't want to try to drive a wedge between you and your band. We left it at that, and Duff, Matt, Dave, and I went back to the tape pile. I mean, I understand what Slash is trying to do, like, with the concept, but he didn't want it to sound like, you know, oh, it's just Guns N' Roses with a different singer, but it's literally Guns N' Roses without Axl. Like, that... Hear me out. I ain't trying to call you a dummy. The AK is actually in the... Well, one of the AKs is actually in the truck, but, you know. What is this? We are reading the Slash autobiography with Anthony Bozza. Anyways, So right now, you hear they're auditioning, trying to audition singers for basically Guns N' Roses minus Axl, but they don't want to sound like Guns N' Roses. Yeah. I'm like, well, that's going to be hard to do. You guys vibe because you're a band together for so long. You guys are Guns N' Roses. That's what I said about... Anyways, penis. We enlisted the assistance of my old attorney turned manager, Dave Codicow, in our quest. It's a good thing we did because as it continued to go nowhere, a few months later, David let us know that Stone Temple Pilots had broken up. I was happy to hear it, for entirely selfish reasons. And besides, it's not AK-47, it's AKM. I think, I don't know. I didn't really care about being polite. I asked Duff to call Scott right away and asked him if he was interested in coming down and checking us out. I don't have an AK, but I got a Mossberg. Want to see? Okay, I'll show you anyways. No. Blitz, you might appreciate it. This is Maverick. Right? Little pistol grip? Huh? Yeah? I can't cock it because it's loaded. You know, we don't want airsoft all over the floor. What's your deal with the all-seeing eye, man? Why are you such a son of a gun? I'm not saying the Illuminati isn't real, but you know, just in case they are, we're ready to greet them politely to leave. Doggo will let them know. Spike, are we ever going to play Xbox again, or are you just on a schedule so different that you couldn't possibly turn on your Xbox during, you know, US hours? Do I need to get on later? Is that what you're saying? Am I going to change my whole schedule that I've been doing for 2 years now, just so I can play with my Aussie buddy for 5 minutes? It's not happening, but, you know. Oh! I didn't really care about being polite. I asked Duff to call Scott right away to ask him if he was interested in coming down and checking us out. We'd just written music to set me free, and we gave Scott the demo and asked him to listen to it. If he liked it, to come by and see us rehearse, no pressure. He kept the track for a week, in which time he took it into his own studio and put a vocal track on it. Aw, Scotty! At the time, we were very much seeking him out, while Scott was trying to map out a plan for himself. He was unsure if what we had going on was right for him, but when we heard his vocal for that track, we knew that it was exactly what we'd been looking for. What he did was far beyond anything I'd imagined for that song. He took it to another level. It sounded different and better than anything we'd done up to that point. I've never asked Scott how he felt after he'd recorded those lyrics. All I know is that the rest of us were excited as hell. And I got the feeling he was too. Scott delivered the track himself that day and came walking into mates wearing one of those fisherman's hats pulled way down over his eyes and one of those surfer sweaters with a hood with a two-sided pocket on the front. The door of our rehearsal room was about 200 feet from the stage we were on, but even at that distance, as low profile as he was, he had an amazing presence that struck me immediately. When he came up on stage to say hello, it felt as if I'd known him for a very long time. We got to talking, we listened to the demo he'd made, and it seemed like we were reconvening more than starting anew. That's a good feeling. Sometimes you meet people like that in your life where it feels like you've known them for a long time, and I like to be that guy where, you know, I strike up a conversation with you as if I've known you since we were kids, even though clearly we do not travel the same circles. But, you know, waffles. It's fun to see how people react. They're like, you see their brain going like, do I know this guy? And then when they realize I'm just a friendly fella that's cutting up for the sake of cutting up, most people accept it willingly and go along with it, and then some people are like, you know, whatever. I still have a hard time distinguishing the "please don't kill me" laugh with the "we're laughing with you" laugh, because a laugh is a laugh. Of course. Ooh, wow, that whiskey. That 111 ain't no joke. I've only had like 2 tiny sips, and I'm just like, yeah, good stuff. Scott's vocals sold us. We were totally committed. It brought together all of the elements that we'd been working on. The only problem was that he wasn't sure he wanted to join our band. He was thinking about recording another solo record, and he also had some personal issues that he was trying to sort out. Oh, well, there's a picture of Scott and Slash right there. Wait, we can't really see on that small one. Hold on. Stay. Don't move. Don't move. See? They're best of buds. It's okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for getting in your way, in your little bubble. You can lay down. It's okay. She is the boss of laying down. In this house, hell, I've been in this house for almost 2 years now. And I think in the 9-10 months I've had her, she's probably laid down more than I have the entire 2 years I've been here. She's really good at laying down. That's all I'm trying to say. Whiskey? No, that's not but it's Oh man, you could taste those charred oak barrels, man. Well, that is a thing right there. A thing of beauty. David Kodakow, who would Dana define, had gone to work at Immortal as a management team, took an active interest in us, and set up a showcase for the industry down at Mates. We performed just one song, Set Me Free. Our audience was made up of music producers, musical directors, and music coordinators from the big movie studios. Tom Zutaut was there too. It's sort of like old times. Now this whiskey got me slobbering a little bit. Good times. It was the first time the band had ever performed together for an audience. And that was interesting because Scott didn't show up until moments before we had to go on. Oh my God, are we getting nostalgia? Are we getting flashbacks here to Axl? We were scurrying to find him, and he got there in the nick of time. We hadn't established a kind of bond with him to know that what he'd done with his previous 24 hours, so we were a bit on edge. Yeah, a bit on edge. Ain't that right, doggo? It didn't matter because when he got there, we ripped into it, and from the first note was all fine. All was fine. It was one of those situations where you're nervous before you play, but you're standing there in front of those industry executives, and from the first note on, you know exactly who you are, and you don't give a shit. There's nothing cornier than a showcase like that, but we were so into that song that we didn't care. We just did our thing, and that was that. It felt like a band. It felt like us against them. We made a good impression on our own terms that day. That was first gear. But I knew that we were just getting going and wouldn't be stopped. The open road lay ahead. We talked about Scott getting clean a lot because it was definitely an issue. We let him know that basically all of us had been there and that we'd rally for him if he needed our support, because should he decide that he really wanted to get clean. We weren't pressuring him. We were showing him that we understood firsthand, to say the least. And I think that in the end, that is what made him feel more comfortable. Once it seemed that Scott was in, we started taking it to the next level. I'm on a new level. I think the greatest thing about this band is that we never behaved like a new band from the start. We acted like we've been together for years. I suppose in some ways we have. We found an appropriate vehicle to use as a first run for a band that had been together for a while. David and Dana reached out to a few movie studios to see what films were coming out that needed an original song. We were presented with a handful, but decided on The Hulk and The Italian Job, which were offered to us by Kathy Nelson from Universal, mostly because they seemed perfect and because we like Kathy. It's Kathy with a K. Ooh, special. We went into the studio with Nick Raskulinec and to cover Pink Floyd's money for the Italian job. Scott nailed it, and the whole thing came together very quickly. We rehearsed it at Maidson one afternoon, then took it to Chaos Studios in Hollywood and got it down. Then, for the Hulk, we went into Ocean Way to do a proper version of Set Me Free. We knew that track would be the one to establish our sound, that we'd seen a rough cut of the film and liked it. Plus, we were excited that Ang Lee was directing. We had Nick produce that track as well, but it wasn't smooth sailing. We had a hard time getting it mixed because we couldn't get it right. We ended up going through a series of mixes and eventually got it together the morning of the deadline. Ooh, talk about calling it close, boys. Whew! That wasn't the most awkward aspect of that session. On the way down to Ocean Way Studios to record that track, I got a call from Duff telling me that Robert and Dean DeLeo from Stone Temple Pilots were producing Alien Ant Farm in the studio right next door to ours. I was very concerned about how Scott might react to that. I got down there before him to make sure nothing happened, and I ran into Robert at the Sparklet's machine in the lounge. He was leaning over me as I filled my solo cup with water, and I had no idea who he was. God, I don't know who anybody is either. I'm face blind. Just kidding. I've probably forgotten more faces. Or something. Waffles. I've met a lot of people in my life is what I'm saying. Slash, he said, yeah, hi. Hi, I'm Robert DeLeo. Nice to meet you. Much respect. He seemed nice enough, but I was still worried about Scott. He came in through a back entrance so they didn't have to cross paths for the duration of that session. Those soundtrack jobs were a test. We were putting ourselves out there in a controlled, limited way. We were a solid rock and roll band, but hadn't made the final leap. David still had a day job as a construction worker at that point, and Scott had been through a long and arduous decline in his last band, so he was still wary and fragile. Poor Scott. Duff and Matt and I were 100% committed. We dropped everything else at this point to focus on this band, so we persevered and moved forward. Like, I wonder how much of this is Slash's words or Anthony Bozza waxing poetic, because, like I said, I've probably heard Slash in my personal fandom of Guns N' Roses. I've probably heard him for a grand total of 5 minutes during the course of 20 years speaking. So, big words like these are kind of like, does Slash really talk like that? Or is that just because of the book? Because, I mean, when I type something, it's generally a different cadence from when I speak. Pee pee poo poo pee pee poo 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 pee pee. Yeah, that's how I generally talk. So that's how I felt Slash talked in all his interviews. But how much when you whacked out on the smack, son? Ain't that right, dog? Yeah, that's right. Choosing a name was a recurring theme at rehearsal, and we'd not really gotten anywhere on that front. One night, Pearl and I went to the movies, and I can't remember what we saw, but once the lights went down and the credits came up, I was struck by the name Revolution Studios. Perla mentioned something about it as well, and there was something there. I liked the beginning of the word, and so I thought of Revolver. It seemed an appropriate name to me because of its multiple meanings. Not only did it evoke a gun, but there was also the subtext of a revolving door, which, considering how many members of other bands this band was composed of, seemed entirely right. Plus, of course, it's the name of the Beatles' best albums. The next day, I met the band at Universal Studios, where we were going to see the screening of Hulk to decide if we wanted to lend our song to the soundtrack. On the walk from Kathy Nelson's office to the screening room, I brought up the idea of the name Revolver as a possibility. That's cool, I like that, Duff said. I do too, Matt said. Scott was quiet for a minute. How about Black Velvet Revolver, he said. I like the idea of something intimate like velvet juxtaposed with something deadly like a gun. Man, outside the box thinker right there. I thought about that for a minute. I totally agreed with where he was going, but it seemed like a mouthful. Hey, I said, how about just Velvet Revolver? That's cool, Scott said. Everyone else agreed. We were all on the same page, and I was inspired. I sat down and started sketching logos right away. I came up with the VR that we are still using, and everybody seemed to like that as well. We were on a roll. We booked a small press conference and performance showcase at the El Rey Theater. It was primarily for industry people, but the public admitted as well. but the public was admitted as well. We wanted to announce that we were officially a band with a singer and a name, and we would be recording an album very soon. We'd just written Slither, so we did that. We did Set Me Free, It's So Easy, Negative Creep by Nirvana, and The Pistols' Pretty Vacant. It wasn't so much a question of song selection at the time. Those were the only songs we knew. Okay. It didn't matter. The energy level was so high that it was just in your face. The chemistry of the band live was powerful stuff and as organic as it gets. That was a defining moment for us. We were finally a group. We had worked together in every capacity except for the most essential one, live performance. That El Rey show was the moment of truth. In the dressing room afterward, we were so inspired by our chemistry on stage that we didn't know what to do. Maybe we should make a record, or should we just go on tour right now? I mean, it's nice to have options. Millions in the bank. You know, just pocket all the proceeds from the concert. Don't worry about, oh, lady, not a lady? Oh, what? Okay, hi, Ray Ray. Chimkin? She don't give a shit. She good. Her eyebrows are moving, so she's listening, but her ears aren't twitching. She's not, like, super excited. So, there's that. Another sip of whiskey? Huh, what are you guys trying to do, kill me? Look at that pretty girl. Oh yeah. Very judgmental eyes. Oh. We opted to make a record because that was the more practical thing to do. Besides, at the time, we were in a writing zone, and new material was coming to us very quickly. Before we'd gotten together with Scott, we'd been writing for over 10 months, so to say that we overloaded him with potential songs to write lyrics for is an understatement. We gave him more than anyone could expect anyone to listen to. Have I come out? I will never come out communist, so, you know, even though I believe most people are not capable of handling personal freedom and thought, nonetheless, the ability to exercise personal freedom responsibly, I still believe in the individual's right to choose for themselves and not go with the mob rule. Constitutional republic, my friend. Everybody else might have a constitution, but, you know, they believe in negative rights. That means they believe the government can grant them rights, and, no, communists would not say that. They'd say, I believe in the collective and all profit is theft, and some other dumb saying that's, on paper it looks right, but morally speaking it's totally wrong and abhorrent. But, you know, 1% of the world population during the 20th century was not enough. They were just doing communism wrong. We'll get it right, says everybody, and then they don't. Poor Bolsonaro. Whatever, shut up. Okay. He came through, though. He chose a few and turned them into things that we'd never expected and loved all the same. Scott has a small studio and rehearsal space in Toluca called Lavish, where he works with his engineer, Doug Green. We took those demos and rearranged the music to accommodate the vocal parts that Scott came up with. Out of that huge body material, we got Big Machine and Dirty Little Thing, while we continued to come up with new stuff like You've Got No Right, Slither, and Sucker Train Blues, which we all worked out, as well as a song called Do It For The Kids, among others. Everything came together really cool. Ah, bro, if I were a communist, I wouldn't have all these things. I mean, I guess I could be like a Bernie communist, you know, like I say all these things about the great Soviet Union and all this other stuff, but in practice, I'm truly capitalist. Ah, whatever, penis. It all seemed to be going great until Scott got arrested in the parking lot at Lavish one night. He was caught sitting there with some girl and they had drugs in the car. Son of a bitch. Stop it. Don't lick your freaking bed, weirdo. He was already on probation. That was his last strike. It was a real turning point for him. When he was released from jail, he didn't go home. He went back into a studio. He queued up a piece of music we'd given him a while before. and he wrote the lyrics to the song that became Fall to Pieces. Scott let it all out in that song. It's a more honest portrait of where he was and what he was dealing with at that particular time than anyone could ever hope to see. It really paints a picture of what was really going on with him, and consequently with us as well. We weren't sure who should produce our record, so we tried out a few people. We threw around a few different names: Rick Rubin, Brendan O'Brien, and a few more. I'm not exactly sure who suggested Bob Ezrin, but we went into the studio and recorded Slither with him at Henson Studios. He'd just done the latest Jane's Addiction record, but aside from that, his past work with everyone from Alice Cooper to Pink Floyd spoke for itself. It didn't go as well as I'd hoped it would. Bob's creative input for the song was too produced. He had too many things going on at once, using up too many tracks, and the end result sounded too congested and too complex for what we saw as a simple song from a fairly simple rock and roll band. We then decided to record a track with Josh Abraham, whom all of us knew. He was relatively new on the scene. His big claim to fame was producing the Stained record, which was a big hit. At least I was familiar with it, and at the time he was working on the new Courtney Love record. We did a test track of a new song called Headspace with him at NRG Studios in North Hollywood. The track sounded good. The drums and guitars and vocals sounded good. It was enough for us to decide to do the rest of the album with him. Sorry, hooked on phonics. Reading are hard. At that point, the word was out. Velvet Revolver and we were getting a lot of interest from all the major labels. Although there weren't many left at that particular time. There was Chrysalis, Elektra, RCA, and Warner's, and they were all interested. In the end, we went with RCA. Man, these days, if you're a talented musician and don't self-publish, there's something seriously wrong with that picture. Going with the record company is just such a bad idea. It screws over the artist so bad. It might be worse now than it's ever been in the past, but that's probably why most popular music is kind of garbage, because, they're just a product of pretty faces, and, they work out, go to bed on time. This whole music is dead right now. It's awake in other genres, but I'm just saying popular, it's never been there, but it's not there even more so today. That's my personal take on pop music. I'm not a 13-year-old girl, so I'm not the target audience. But first we did the whole wine and dine free lunch shuffle out in New York for a week or so. It wasn't hard to decide who we'd go with once Clive Davis got on a plane with his A&R guy, Ashley Newton, to come see us rehearse in Toluca Lake. It was a great show of integrity and solidarity considering the setting. They sat in a room that was about 20 feet deep, with the pool separating them from us, and all our amps right in their face. They sat through 5 songs like that. They wanted to get past the hype that now surrounded the band and see us play in our natural habitat. That was great, really great, Clive said when we were done. Thank you. They loved Slither and Fall to Pieces, and pretty much after that our mind was made up. We went with RCA. After pre-production with Josh Lavish, we moved over to NRG to do the basic tracks. Coincidentally, in the studio next door, Dean and Robert from SDP were working on some new stuff, once again right next door to us. This time they were unavoidable. They were literally in the next room, and we shared a lounge. It was only a matter of time before Scott ran into them, no matter what we did, but it was cool. They'd gotten over it. Dean sat down with Scott, and I don't know what they talked about. But afterward, there were no hard feelings. Scott even played him our demos. All of us hung out, and it was all okay. It was the first time I met Dean, and I've seen a bunch of those guys around since then, and it's been nothing but fine. Both of them are really good guys. Oh man, we're getting so close to the end. I think no matter how far we drop or rise in the numbers, we might finish this today. Oh, speaking of which, though, need another sip of my corn squeezins. Whew. Something that strong should not be that smooth. My gosh. I suppose after being able to drink Everclear straight. You can pretty much drink anything. But this is much nicer than Everclear, though. When it came to recording my guitar parts for the album, I wanted to go into a similar studio to save the band some money. I don't drink that much. I drink once a week. Maybe 2 or 3 times. But that's it. Max. Most of the rest of the week, it's just other bad stuff. But not alcohol. I wanted to go into a smaller studio to save the band some money, so Josh suggested that we do them at his studio on the south corner of Highland and Sunset Boulevards. This is where Jimi Hendrix recorded Axis Bold as Love. I walked in and the place was just a bit funky. Bad shag carpet, an old paint job, cockroaches, stuff like that. I got into the studio with Josh and there was a really nice mixing board, but I looked up and noticed that there was just 2 small Yamaha AS10 studio monitors for speakers, which are great for listening stuff back, but I record my guitar in the studio by placing amps in the main room where the microphones are, and playing in the control room where the producer and the mixing board are. I do this mostly because I can't stand headphones. The setup was not going to work at all for my purposes. Up until then, as a rule, I'd recorded the basic tracks as scratch guitar tracks live as scratch guitar tracks and redone them in the control room at megadecibel levels so that it felt like an actual concert when I truly laid them down. The monitor speakers are my reference points as to what I'm recording. So they need to be big and they need to be loud. The pair in front of me weren't going to cut it. Slash needs a loud, yeah! So this is how you record guitars, I asked Josh. Well, yeah, usually these studio monitors are enough. I've never played that way, and I can tell you right now, they're not going to be loud enough. At that moment, I thought of what my wife Perla had told me over and over again. I like to do things the hard way. I could see what I was throwing Josh and his whole studio setup into a tailspin. I wanted to work on that tendency of mine, so rather than make a fuss and insist that we book a new studio and perhaps a new producer, I chose to adapt. Whoa, Slash, big steps, buddy. Listen, just call in some bigger speakers and we'll make it work, I said. Josh looked genuinely relieved. I can't say that it was a pleasant experience. The studio engineers kept renting us new speakers, but none of them did an acceptable job. That's not true. They got exactly the right set on the very last day of recording. In the end, I was satisfied with my work on our debut record, but when I look back on it now, it was a very uncomfortable, confining session for me. All in all, my playing is pretty reserved on that record, which is why there aren't as many solos as there could have been. I felt too restricted to improvise the way I usually do. Aw, poor Slash. I think Dave got a lot more out of the digital studio setup than I did when he came in to do his parts. He did great. He added all those sound textures that really made the guitars complete. At the time, Scott had been court-ordered to stay in a halfway house, a sentence that resulted from his arrest. He'd come in and do his vocals and then go right back. He was only allowed to work for 3 hours a day. Holy fuck. Okay. Duff and I went to New York City to sit in on the mixing sessions with George Marino, engineering them, and Contraband was finished. I had my first drink in over a year that night. I remained pretty quiet about my feelings on the GNR Axl situation up until Duff and I did a promo tour supporting the release of Velvet Revolver's first CD. At that point, I hadn't gone public about what had transpired between Axl and me, and I hadn't planned on going there. But the media wanted to know my thoughts on the subject, and I couldn't help it. I had nothing pleasant to say. It was as if they touched a raw nerve, and suddenly everything that came out of my mouth was bitter and spiteful. The complete antithesis of how I really wanted to react. Well, GNR and I parted ways. I'd honestly wanted to stay low-key and never bicker in the press. Mostly because so many artists before me had gone that route, and I thought it distasteful. But there I was in the corner with the press in every direction, hungrily looking for controversy and prodding that raw nerve. I couldn't control my responses. Everything I said about Axl was negative. It was almost emotional. This, of course, pissed off Axl and was definitely the catalyst for rant against me in 2005 press release, not to mention complicating the GNR lawsuit even further. You know what? Oh. Fucking prima donnas, man. Doggo, the camera can't focus on you. The fur is confusing it. Oh. While the CD was being packaged, Duff and I went on a press tour to promote it in Europe and Japan for a few weeks. The band went on the road before it even came out. Our first gig was in Kansas, and from there we hit every city in just about every state. We managed to generate enough buzz when the album was released in June 2004 and went to number 1 in its second week. We were in Vegas for a show when Clive called us to let us know that we'd hit the top of the charts. And I have to say that after all I'd seen and I'd done, getting a call from the legendary Clive Davis with news that gave me goosebumps. It was an arrival in my book. That was the start of a tour that seemed to keep going and going, building momentum the longer it went. All in all, we remained on the road for 19 months, playing everything from clubs to festivals to stadiums. Holy crap, could you imagine playing for over a year and a half? That is nuts. 19 months straight. That is, whew, mad props. I don't have it in me to go from hotel room to hotel room and so on and so forth for a month, nonetheless for a year and a half plus. Jesus. That's not, I mean, these guys are all seasoned professionals. That's been their life for the last 20 years, but still, fuck. Well, maybe not Scott Whalen, but that's besides the point. Penis. Oh my god, where was I? The band played to crowds of thousands around the world, and our record sold 3 million copies worldwide. We worked hard on that tour. We'd often play 5 nights a week, a different city every night. We did it all on a bus in close quarters. We did Live 8. We did the Donington Festival. We put out 3 videos on that record. It was pretty successful. Suddenly, we were once again in a major band. Our last gig was in Orlando, and then everyone went home and resumed their lives. Once we did, we got into all kinds of shit. There were rumors that we were breaking up, and there were rumors that all of us were back on drugs and on the verge of self-destruction, and too many rumors to name. Well, I mean, you guys earned a reputation, for crying out loud. I, for one, yet again, did have a very hard time readjusting to being home. When we were writing Contraband, way before we went in and recorded all of it, my son London was born in August 2002. I'd gone with Perla to get her an ultrasound, and at that time, I was still getting my head around the fact that I had a child on the way. Obviously, this was going to be a new experience for me. That said, once I knew one was coming, I thought I wanted a little girl, figuring out she'd be just like her mom, and they would be inseparable, a notion that further fed my denial about my inescapable new responsibilities. There was my little idyllic version of fatherhood until I realized something I'd been ignoring. I have a hard enough time with grown women, forget about little ones. A daughter would probably be my undoing. I breathed a sigh of relief when Perla delivered a beautiful, healthy 9-pound baby boy. We named him London not only because he was conceived in the UK, but because I'd had a friend with that name in grade school and never forgot how cool I thought he was. It was, not he. Okay, whatever. Penis. I didn't have any experience raising children, obviously, but I did get some training. Perla felt an overwhelming rush of the maternal instinct when she got pregnant, and one day she brought home a Pomeranian puppy from the pet store. The dog immediately became my responsibility, especially once Perla was ordered to a few months of bed rest. I was forced to raise this dog, and that was my preparation for fatherhood. This is the only experience I've had raising anything. Because one thing is for sure, having cats and snakes doesn't really count. All things considered, I must have done something right because our dog was very well behaved by the time London was born. Having a child forced me to be present. it insisted that I honor my sobriety. But when I wasn't with Velvet Revolver, I was home with my wife, raising our son. I was his dad, assembling the nursery, shopping for toys, putting together the electric mobile sets. And then Perla got pregnant again. We found out that it was another baby boy, and I breathed another sigh of relief. Our new baby was a breech as well. Though the complications didn't develop until later on in her term, it was rough on Perla once again. You didn't mention the first one was a breech, you fuck. Although, if anybody has the excuse of friggin' them derpy brain, I think Slash definitely gets a big pass on that one. I mean, he did OD and die. And he didn't make a hit single out of it, like Nikki Sixx. Whatever. Shh. I was on tour when my second son was delivered. I managed to fly home regularly to visit Pearl in the hospital, but the day that my second son was to be delivered, I had a show the night before. I had to fly from the hospital to Atlantic City on a red-eye, then fly home on a red-eye to be there in time for his birth the next morning. I missed my flight back to LA and was lucky enough to get another one. They had to hold up Perla's C-section until I got there. I went right to the hospital and arrived just before he was born. I spent that night and the next morning with Perla with my perfect new little 8-pound baby boy. Then I flew back out and met the band at the next gig. Such is the life my two sons have been born into. We didn't know what to name our second son until we remembered that what our good friend movie mogul Robert Evans told us we should name our first son. As usual, he had a strong opinion that I couldn't deny. Give him the coolest name that a man can have, he told us in that signature baritone. Name him Cash. Robert, it's too late, I said. We already named him London. All right, but if you get a second chance, he said, do the right thing. Do the right thing, people. You gotta do that. Anyways, after 2 years at the fever pitch that is non-stop touring, I was once again dropped into the real world, and as familiar as I was with the condition, it hadn't gotten any easier to bear. If anything, it had become a harder adjustment to make. When all you care about is the grind, going from gig to gig, when the show is the only thing you're looking forward to for an extended period of time, when room service and your hotel are your reward, you exist in a very stylized mode of living. Right? My gosh. That would be nice. That would be super dope. Like, you know, I want a medium burger, you know, and all the fries with cheese dipping sauce. Like, yeah. Dude, I'd probably gain 500 pounds touring. Not gonna lie. Not that I'm a lightweight necessarily right now, but anyways, let's not worry about me. We're worried about Slash right now and his new family and touring with a new band. Home, no matter who you are, is nothing like that. When you're home, you have to get off your ass and do things yourself. When you're home, you become as normal as you'll ever be because you have to rely on your own faculties. In the past, I'd relied on booze and drugs to offset that transition and make it a bit easier to take it in the short run. Once you have kids, if you intend to be a dependable parent at all, that option goes out the window. When you come off the road and you're a parent, you get home and you have to deal. You go from a situation where you're taken care of to no one taken care of when you're taking care of to one you're okay. Penis. You know what he tried to say because I couldn't read it. That was a tough read right there. It wasn't easy on either Perla or me when I got home. I had started drinking wine, a lot of wine on tour. She'd been watching me slip into my old ways once again. For whatever reason, when she came to visit me on tour, I chose that day to sit at the bar drinking under the guise of waiting there for her. All that I accomplished was getting myself smashed to the point that I was useless when she finally arrived. I'd say hello and go pass out. So we had some issues to deal with. I mean, life is difficult. I couldn't imagine how much more difficult it is with his situation, but waffles. So when Velvet Revolver got signed, got our album together, and set about preparing to tour, we underwent a change in management that I didn't agree with at all. This eventually led me to find my own manager separate from the band. That sounded like a logical solution to me, but all that did in reality was alienate me from the other guys and cause a great degree of animosity among us and among the management teams whenever a business arrangement came up. The situation added an extra level of stress that 2 years on the road did nothing but escalate. The tension never affected our chemistry on stage or creatively, but on a day-to-day interpersonal level, things were touchy, and by the end of the tour, everyone was at one another's throats. I stand by my decision, but I understand now that it made me the pain in the ass of the band in the other guy's eyes. I get why I drove them nuts. Call him Mr. Planners because he's driving their nuts. It was around this time that Axl chose to send out a press release that did nothing but add fuel to the fire. It's been widely documented, so I won't do it justice by going into it all, but in short, Axl released a statement claiming that I'd come by his house extremely coherent early one morning to ask him to please settle the lawsuit between us that had been ongoing for years at this point. It also claimed that he and I talked for a while and that I had nothing but disparaging comments to make about Scott Weiland and everyone else in my band. Damn, Axl, what the shit? The truth is, I haven't spoken a word to Axl personally since I left the band in 1996. It's sad but true. I did go by his house one night, but I was drunk. Perla wasn't, and she was driving. I walked up to the door and delivered a note that read something like, "Let's work this out. Call me. /" But I didn't give it to Axl. I gave it to his assistant. Now, we all paint a pretty picture in our heads, right? In any case, Axl released his statement, and it was a big deal in the press because it was the first time Axl had gone public with his opinion about me, the lawsuit, or anything like that. Oh, pretty girl. Whiskey? Maybe just a little bit. This is just around the world. As I've said, this incident was widely reported in the press and on the internet, and anyone who is interested can go read all about it if they so choose. The fact of the matter is, this incident and the resulting negative effect it had on Velvet Revolver was very unsettling to me. I can barely even talk about it still, let alone recreate it in detail here. I thought I was going to see everything I'd just finally gotten together fall apart. That's some petty shit, Axl. But anyways. First things first, the lawsuit was a nightmare that had gone on too long. For fear of further litigation, the easiest way to explain it is to say that since 2001, we were involved in a lawsuit over the rights and profits stemming from licensing and merchandise. It was a typical broken up band's litigation where one party complains of underpayment by another party. The road of rock and roll is littered with that kind of shit. But what hurt the most was that I had to defend myself to my band. I showed up and insisted that what was alleged wasn't true. But the way that Axl had written this thing made it sound so matter-of-fact that everyone seemed to think it was. What the dick. The guys were very dubious about accepting my story. At the same time, I was very sincere about telling them the truth. At first, I thought I should respond publicly, and told my band I would, but later decided it would only complicate the issue and prolong it. I wasn't sure what to do. I still wanted to proceed. My credibility was riding on it. We had a band meeting a few days later, and Scott didn't show. It was obvious to me that since I hadn't made a move, I'd let him down. Oh, Scotty. I mean, maybe the reason why I never had that drive is because, well, I had an emotionally neglectful childhood. I didn't have that hunger with, successful parents or non-existing parents, and I just didn't have that drive. I've never had that drive to pursue anything, and looking back now, I'm like, well, you could have played guitar or bass or done vocals for a rock band or been a pro fighter or an actor, producer, director of photography at the very least, and you did nothing. I suck. Well, we're not talking about me. We're reading Slash's book right now, so shh. We're gonna lay down. Lay down. Hey! Lay down, shit ass. Thank you. I could hear the door opening. Thank you. You're the best. Waffles. Then Scott released his own rebuttal. He attacked Axel on every level. And my instinctual reaction wasn't "you're right," it was "you can't talk shit about Axel." God damn it, man. Abusive relationship to the max. That's my own line. I can talk shit about Axel. I can talk shit about Axel all day if I want to. That's because I've had to deal with him for years. But neither Scott nor anyone else has that right. I'll talk shit about Axel right now. Right? It's like, no, only I get to talk shit about Axel. Tensions in the band escalated as a result, and I got my gear out of Matt Sorum's home studio where we'd been writing and rehearsing. Word on the street was that I'd quit Velvet Revolver to rejoin Guns N' Roses. I don't know who started that rumor, but it had legs long enough that it caused an exhausting internal battle. The media took a particular liking to that story, that Slash had ditched his former Guns bandmates to rejoin Axl in whatever his idea of Guns N' Roses was going to be. At that point, I think Chinese democracy was still thought to be on the way any year now. Look at that pretty girl. I said look at her! Isn't she adorable? Yes she is. You should have seen her whole body tense up, but she's going boop, 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 boop. Yeah? Thank you. You protected me. That's a good girl. It's okay, honey. We got pistols and a shotgun here. If it was a bad guy, we'd have exited him right out that door and then waited for the PD to come by and clean up the corpse. I'll handle the blood and gore and viscera the next day. It looked like what I was doing was a fact, but for that fact that I wasn't doing it. If you picked up any music paper around that time, or listened to the radio, or checked out blogs on the internet, there was no avoiding it. It was etched in stone. I'd left Velvet Revolver. I was going back to Guns. The reality was that neither happened. During those few months, I was just at home recording musical ideas on my digital 16 track. It was literally a waiting game. It took all of us a while to get past all that bullshit. Finally, when it all went away, we got back to work. I just went over to Matt's house one day, like nothing had ever happened. Listen, man, I said, after all of that was ridiculous, and all of this ridiculous. Can I tell you what really happened? Yeah, man. I said my piece, relating the story once again as it had gone down. Clearly, time had proven that I had no reunion with Axl, and that I wasn't rejoining Guns N' Roses because nothing had happened. There's an exclamation point. He really wanted to drive that point home. That fact seemed to convince the guys that my version of events was the truth. I never felt that I needed to explain myself to those guys, but I had, which always pissed me off. But I got over it, and so did they. After I had a one-on-one with Matt, I had one with Kirshner, and then Duff and Scott. All in all, it was completely unnecessary drama. whether it was unsaid or not. I just didn't have the time for it. But we got through it, and we're all better for it today. Oh. Well, not all of you, but I don't know. Wait, how old is this book? I'll look that up. Oh, we are finishing this book today, but da, 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 da. 2007. Okay, so this book is I think I bought this book. If it wasn't a Barnes and Noble, then it might have been the Dollar Tree. Don't quote me on that. I have a book I bought at the Dollar Tree, totally intending to read, and still haven't opened it up. It's fine. Shh. It's fiction. I don't do fiction. It was an impulse purchase. It was a dollar, for crying out loud, people. The dog will tell you. Ain't that right, dog? No, the band finally got together and started rehearsing at Matt's house, in his recording studio in his garage. Everyone was getting along again, and we started to work on the new material for our next record. It was at this time that I tore my rotator cuff, working out in the gym, and went to see a doctor. Oh no. He prescribed a few therapeutic exercises and gave me a bottle of Vicodin. I knew damn well what Vicodin was and what effect it had on me, but in the form of a prescription from my doctor, it all seemed okay and actually necessary. I took the Vicodin as instructed, one every 4 hours. My God! It soon became every 2 hours, and then every 1 hour, and then every 15 minutes, and that's just the way it works with me. Ugh. For a torn rotator cuff? Holy fuck, bro, really? The fact that he's still alive is fucking phenomenal. I think Ozzy's probably the most crazy example of a druggie still being alive, but Slash is up there. Not only was my band situation in jeopardy, Pearl and I were at odds like never before. I was heading one way with the Vicodin, and she was heading in another way. After the birth of our second son, Perla wanted to lose all the weight she'd gained having children, and in doing so got addicted to prescription diet pills. Holy fuck, people! When it rains, it pours. Diet pills are basically a gourmet form of speed, and she'd been taking them long enough, indiscriminately, that it altered her personality. She was already a super attentive, super assertive person who was always a few steps ahead of me. Adding speed of any kind to that equation accentuated those traits to the point that she became too intense for me to deal with. Speaking of diet pills. Hydroxycut. Right. I was stationed in Korea, and I was trying my best to lose some of the short order line food that I'd been consuming, and alcohol and all that goodness. I took the Hydroxycut, staggered it with, I'm gonna catch that bus, go to the gym, get a killer workout in. Well, unfortunately, I missed the bus, and I've had like 10 or 15 minutes before the next one came by. But I was so fucking amped up that I was just doing push-ups and sit-ups and pacing back and forth, walking up and down the little 3 steps behind the bus stop and shit. In that 15 minutes, I had the greatest workout ever, and I chose not to go to the gym. Turns out, that was back when they were getting the Hydroxycut with the ephedrine in it, which is basically meth. One of the best workouts I've ever fucking had in that amount of time. You know, I don't even know what happened to that hydroxycut. I think I threw it out or whatever. I was just like, yep, one workout. I don't need to work out ever again. That's how good that workout was. But, you know, meth is no joke, kids. Don't do it. Our interactions were getting increasingly agitated, so I went to Las Vegas to take part VH1's Rock Honors in 2006, where, along with my buddy Tommy Lee, we did a set of Kiss songs. While I was there, I met up with my Oxy-connected friend and got more pills than I could handle. My friend had beaten cancer, but in the interim, he'd allegedly gotten into a near-lethal car accident and had a newly unending prescription for them. When someone tells you they have a prescription like that, you don't ask questions. Penis. Penis. Oh my god, I said we're going to finish it? I feel like we're going to finish it still. We're getting close. Yeah. I'm going to finish this. Even if I can't see straight and I have to repeat sentences over and over again. But everybody left! I need you guys to chat and refresh. Please and thank you. If you're here to support me, then support me. Ooh woo. Lesson 3. But then I'd finally gotten familiar enough with the drug that I wondered what would happen if I crushed them up, liquefied them, and melted them down to inject. My God. Penis and waffle. See, somebody here gets it. Thank you there. Tzerg. Space. Appreciate you. Ooh. I was quite pleased to discover that it worked. I had a great time in Vegas. It was a perfect place to face the fact that that's where I was heading. I stayed there for a few more days than I needed to. I just got high. I was just chipping. I didn't have a habit. Chipping is a here and there relationship with smack. Thank you. I appreciate you guys. Ooh woo. I came back to my home, and as my relationship went further downhill, I was self-medicating. I had a stash of Vicodin and Oxycontin. Perla and I split up abruptly. We were apart for a day. I went to a hotel out near the airport. I packed up our Hummer with my clothes and my cat in my mind, and I wasn't ever coming back. I wasn't at all a saint, but I couldn't handle where she was at. I told her that she needed to go to rehab. Holy shit, really? She agreed. If I'm going in, take care of the kids, was the last thing she said to me. Oh my god. Get 'em, girl! While Perla was in rehab, it got bad. Our nanny took care of the kids while I maintained a healthy oxy habit. That's what killed Billy Mays, the king of infomercials. Billy Mays here with OxyContin. See, now I made that joke then when he died, and I still make it today because I'm an insensitive twat. I found an LA connection and bought a 3-month supply, and while I didn't do it every day, eventually I did it every night. I kept it from the band like I kept it from my family. But then eventually it crept in. I'd do a shot before rehearsal. I'd pursued the creative vibe with the band in a clear mental state, but eventually there I was again, foggy. It was so out of hand that I was shooting up in Matt's bathroom, and it was obvious to everyone that I was high. All the same, no one said a word, at least for a while, and it says a lot about our collective tolerance. I wasn't even trying to hide my habit from a band of guys who'd had their share of problems and a singer who still had his. I was so obnoxious about it that Matt even found blood on the wall. If my nodding out at rehearsal didn't give it away, that surely did. We kept on keeping on, not really going forward, just kind of writing and creatively treading water. I accompanied Matt to a Camp Freddy gig in Vegas, not so much to see the show as to hook up with my Oxy connection and stock up. I thought I knew what I was doing, but I don't think I'd realize how quickly I'd become the dark horse. I remember being backstage at that show. Everyone would get quiet when I walked into the room. It was starting to be like that wherever I went. Oh, that's so sad. My manager at the time now is Carl Stubner, and while I was in Vegas, he called me. We talked about a few things, and though I didn't realize it in the moment, he was listening carefully, trying to gauge where I was at. I don't remember what I was talking about, but suddenly he interrupted me. Hey, he said, be honest with me. Are you okay? Yeah, man, I said, lying. I'm fine. Why? Listen to me. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. I'm not here to be a cop. I just want you to know if you're okay. Because if you're not, I'm here for you. But you have to be honest with me. I'm fine. Really? Yeah, I'm fine. I mean, we all know that the biggest liars in the world are junkies and politicians. Probably politicians because they care more about the vote and being reelected than anything else. But fuck politicians. I want to be a politician, not so much for anything else other than the pay. I'd like the pay. Can I get the pay? Since politicians don't do anything, could I do the nothing for a couple bucks? I did the gig. I met my drug buddy. I came home to LA and I knew I was too fucked up to be around Perla, who had come home entirely clean and sober, let alone be around our children. I did the only thing that made sense to me. I checked myself into a West Hollywood hotel and I scheduled the day that I would check myself into rehab. Until that morning, I intended to finish up the drugs I'd bought right there in my room or wherever they might leave me. Pearl and everyone else was worried about me. But she was patient and tolerant, and that is why we love each other the way we do. Lay down. Thank you. I wasn't fine. But I was almost ready to admit it. I knew that my debauchery needed to end. I had planned to get some space for my wife and for my band after I'd allowed myself those predetermined 4 months to let it all hang out. I knew I was in need of some solace and quiet, and I got it. This time rehab turned out to be really good for me because this time I surrendered. First I kicked drugs, then I cleared my head and did some work on figuring out why I like putting myself in the same position over and over again. Early in the morning of July 3rd, 2006, I checked into rehab. I did a full 30 days. I fully surrendered. I learned more about myself than I ever thought was possible, and as of writing, I've been sober ever since. Once I was back on track, the band got back on track and we got down to recording and writing our second record, Libertad. It was a different experience. We were different people exploring new ideas, united by our camaraderie. There was a freedom to the whole thing that was refreshing. It was as if we'd truly grown, or maybe just grown comfortable with who we were as a band. My gosh. We started working with Rick Rubin back before I got sober. Actually, I believe it was before and after my Oxy binge. We're excited to do so for obvious reasons. Rick's track record is legendary, but it didn't really work out. Rick has his methods, he has his crew. There to do the producing and engineering, and every few days he pops in to see how it's going. Usually he's got a few bands set up like that around town. That really didn't work for us. Rick would listen to a bit of what we were doing and tell us to take one part of a song and combine it with something else that he'd heard that he liked. We also got jealous of the fact that he was spreading his focus around, doing 4 albums at once. It felt like he was always leaving us to see another one of his concubines. And when he was there, we didn't really connect. He sat back and let us go. Under those conditions, it felt like this record would take us a year or more to complete. We broke it off with Rick and moved our operations to Scott's studio, Lavish. Scott suggested that we give it a go with Brendan O'Brien, who had done more of most of SCP's records. I'd only known him in that capacity. I liked him well enough, and I talked to him on the phone, so we had him come in, and everything seemed to fall into place. Brendan liked working fast and hard, and he insisted that every member of the band be present for every session. Yes, really, that should be a thing. I think that this is one of the best pieces of advice I could ever give to any band. If any one of us didn't show up on time, Brendan refused to work until everyone was present, which both whipped us into pretty good shape and motivated us to be there. But he brought more than just discipline to the equation. He brought a musicality that stems from the fact that he plays guitar, bass, and drums. At any given moment, he could play along with us, and it really helped the process. With someone that informed, we progressed very quickly. Quick side note: thanks to a court order, I had to go do my own personal inpatient rehab shit, and we had this one counselor that issued the personal challenge to me that no one can get under her skin. Challenge accepted. I did get under her skin quite a few times and almost made her cuss. Feels great. Looking back now, maybe not so great. But at the time. But not only was she not a veteran, but she wasn't an addict either. So it was hard to fucking listen to anything this shit cunt social worker had to say. Not the point. Let's carry on. Our sessions were consistent and everyone was there. Everyone contributed and everyone appreciated what each player was doing. I didn't think it was possible, but the chemistry that came out of that mutual participation surpassed the first gun sessions. Everyone was so inspired and everything we did, every experiment even, was very musical. We were playing great. Scott was singing great, and what we ended up using as the final tracks on the album were, for the most part, the first or second live takes of each song. That's fucking impressive, because studio time is fucking expensive as shit. I recorded a 3.5 minute voice demo, and that probably cost me around $150-200. And I don't know where the fucking masters are, nonetheless, anything else, but it's fine. It's fine. You don't need to be a voice actor, psycho. It's fine. We were playing great. Scott was singing great, and what we ended up using as the final tracks on the album were, for the most part, the first or second live takes of each song. That record is what happens when you pair a really good rock and roll band who loves what they're doing with a producer who really understands them and knows exactly what he's doing. So that's my thing, is you need to be relatable. You gotta have a common ground. Like, I could probably chew the fat with most musicians, experienced and otherwise, and I've had enough experience musically, including studio session time and so on and so forth, that I could probably chat with most recording artists, new and otherwise, versus someone who knows nothing about it. Now, I haven't had a gear guy sitting down there, an engineer, making sure all my levels are right and everything else. We just worked with whatever equipment was available, and for anybody who's ever worked in a studio, if you don't bring your own fucking gear, whatever they have in there is just trash garbage. For my purposes, though, the equipment was fine, because, I'm an amateur at everything I do. Amateur doesn't mean a greenhorn, but, that's we're not talking about that right now. Penis. Pearl and I are both all cleaned up now, and we're really happy. July 2007 will be my 1-year anniversary, and I've gotten more done this past year than in 2 years before that combined. You only get so many karmic get-out-of-jail-free passes. You're bound to run out eventually. So far I've been extremely lucky, so I'm not taking any more chances. A junkie only has 2 options, and I've got a long list of friends on both sides of the fence. They can get clean or can get dead. And every day I'm glad I found the strength to take the high road. If memory serves. I've been asked more than a few times why I decided to do this book at all, and here's why. A few people who know me well kept telling me that I should do it, and I finally agreed with them. I was very reluctant to share my life in any way, particularly in a medium open to public consumption, most of all because I regard a memoir as something you do when you've got no career left to speak of. That isn't the case for me, and even if it were, I wouldn't have much interest in that. It's natural to regard your life objectively, but once I did, I realized that my story up until now made for something pretty entertaining. I also realized that if I didn't get it all down now, there was a really very good chance that I'd forget it all. In the end, I realized that this book would serve another purpose. It would put one era of my career to rest and signify the start of the rest of it. Oh, man. It's kind of nice. So, refresh your comment once again would be appreciated, guys, because, we're at that point. We're almost there. Bear with me. We're almost there. A couple more pages. A lot more pages, but, it's fine. I got whiskey. We're good. I'd like to make one thing pretty clear, because this is another question that haunts me almost every day. Usually because it's asked by people who don't know me at all. I'd like to state, very simply, once more, why I chose not to continue on with Guns N' Roses, so that no one feels the need to ask me this ever again when they see me on the street. Here it goes. 1. The constant disrespect for all involved by going on late for no good reason, night after night after night. 2. The legal manipulation that Axl forced on us, demanding ownership of the name, to downgrading us contractually to hired hands. And 3. Losing Izzy and Steven, who were such an integral part of the band's sound and personality. Without them, the band no longer had its original chemistry. That's pretty straightforward to the point. My departure had nothing to do with the artistic differences as many people claim to know. It's not as simple as Axl wanted synths and Slash was old school. It had nothing to do with Axl wanting to go digital and Slash staying analog. I think that dissolving the kind of band and the kind of musical chemistry we had over something so trivial is just asinine. Hey, don't lick my foot. Just lay down. It's okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's true, I am old school. And I do like keeping it simple, but I've never been closed-minded. If anything, I was more than flexible, and I was willing to try any kind of recording technique or explore any new sound, as long as I was doing so on an equal playing field with musicians that work together toward a common goal. I would have hung in there with Axl with an industrial record or whatever else he wanted to try with the creative vibe between us was positive. My flexibility is the only thing that kept me in the band as long as it did. That's how a team works. Unfortunately, we stopped being a team somewhere along the way. As for the rest of it, how it all played out, I learned looking back on it all that the people Axl hired to represent his interests, through all of the band's undoing, could have been a bit smarter than they were. Maybe intelligence has nothing to do with it. Had they cared enough about him and about Guns N' Roses as a band to advise him to pursue any other path than the one he did, the story may have had a different ending. Anyone could have foreseen the lack of positive outcome that lay ahead on the road Axl chose to go down. But then again, maybe that is how he wanted it. My best friend Mark Cantor is putting out a book that is a visual accompaniment to all that you read here. Here's a guy who, way back when I was living in my mom's house before junior high, always had an Instamatic in his hand and was snapping pictures. Mark came to as many gigs in my high school in Hollywood and once I was in Guns as he could possibly get to. His ever-present camera was just part of Mark. I never thought anything of it. I never thought that any of those pictures would ever be seen again. I never thought that a side effect of that hobby would be a pretty extensive and intimate chronology of everything Guns N' Roses did prior to 1988. All of it was just sitting around Mark's house all these years until now. It is now a book of pictures called Reckless Road. I never would have expected my childhood buddy to be capable of such shots. Before I wrap this thing up, I have something to say about my parents. In the retelling of my childhood, I emphasize the negative over the positive because the negative aspects of how my family evolved ended up informing my decisions as a kid more than any of the positive ones did. The negative is what explains where I turned in my youth. But that was lost in my recreation of how my parents' positive influences taught me to be the person I am. My parents were such a prominent, encouraging influence on me as a child during the years when I strove to find out who I was going to be. I couldn't have asked for better grades because they are truly the most creative people I've ever met. Guides. Sorry, not guides. Guides, not grades. Shit. Two of the most creative people I've ever met at this point. I've met many. Both of them are amazingly talented, and though they didn't ultimately prove to be the right match for each other, they did see beyond their differences to raise their children in a unique and informed fashion. The way they brought my brother and me up was unconventional, but infused with love and discipline, but that never veered into being overly domineering. I live so much in the moment that I've daydreamed about the future beyond tomorrow. I've never related to those people who plan their lives 5 years down the line. As much as these types think they have control in their reality, I beg to disagree, because how much can anyone really plan what is going to happen to them beyond the next 24 hours? It's not that I don't care what happens 5 years from now, it's just that the next 24 hours is a stepping stone to getting there. I can understand that. I live so much in the moment that I've never daydreamed about the future beyond tomorrow. I've never related to those people who plan their lives 5 years down the line. My bad. I found that just being day to day, just waiting to see what comes and going from there is the only way to grow. It's informed how much I've dealt with Velvet Revolver in nothing but the best respect. We've come so far in such a short time. Whenever we're on stage, it's at once so familiar and exciting that it seems like our first show, even though it's our 1000th. I'm consumed with what we're doing. I'm proud of the record we made in Libertad, and I feel that we're in a place that we're now just capable of tapping into what this band is really capable of. At the time of this writing, our second record is just a few weeks old, and I can't wait to see where our next record is going to go. We're lucky. We stumbled upon something that is just beginning to evolve, and is doing so in such a positive way. As this book comes to a close, Velvet Revolver is about to embark on our first headlining tour of arenas and sheds. We got to that level by the end of our 2-year promotion of Contraband, but this is different. We're starting where we ended, and from where we can only build a bigger beast. I'm happier than I've ever been musically. This band writes creative, earnest, complex rock and roll. It's not quite iconic, but as far as I'm concerned, it sure is funny that I found my future by revisiting my past. After looking around, ignoring the obvious so as to avoid anything that seemed like a revisitation, I ended up locking up with the guys I'd spent the better part of my career and life with. And once we did, the past became an afterthought, and the present has been better than it ever has been. As for the future, aside from playing in Velvet Revolver, at some point I want to do a record with all the players I've played with and admired over the years. I have a list of them, which is long. At this point, all that I know is I plan to call it Slash and Friends. I'm actually looking at my wish list of collaborators right now, and no, I'm not going to tell you who is on it. Fine. Is this Shiny Toy Guns? I wasn't expecting to get away tonight without a copyright strike. It is, I think. I'm happy to say that I know for a fact that as of summer of 2007, Steven Adler is doing better. I've been helping him help himself get off crack, smack, and Jägermeister, which has been a compound addiction that has been ruining his life for the past quarter century. Counting from before he was ousted from GNR, this is the longest he's ever been clean. He has some pretty good people around him now, and I'm happy to report that he seems genuinely happy. Ron Schneider, my bass player from in Titus Sloan, is working with Steven as a tech/moral supporter. It's funny how things come in full circle when you think your circle has expanded infinitesimally. At the same time, hearing about Ron's situation, I couldn't help but realize that almost everybody that hung around a lot with Guns N' Roses ended up becoming a junkie at one time or another. Influence, man. OG influencers. Before this NPC craze. Before TikTok. Before YouTube. Before Facebook and MySpace. Penis. When you review your life like this, it's strange. There have been parts that I've looked at as if I wasn't there. I've read a few of those stories as if for the first time. But more than anything, you gain perspective. This kind of exercise isn't easy, but in the long run, it's a really good idea. It's a good thing to truly understand how and why I'm the same, yet different than I've always been. It's as if my personality remains, but my wisdom has grown. If there's one thing that made my bullshit recede, it's fatherhood. That reality that I was going to be someone's dad didn't kick in until I found myself staring at the assembly line instructions for a crib. We just finished painting our guest room, and there I was, having to assemble this thing. There was no going back. And there, as much as I freaked out at that moment, I didn't want to go back. If anything, I ran toward it, not away. I let myself be consumed with baby stuff, which is great, because I enjoyed it. All things considered, it came very naturally. Once I'd gotten the crib together, I knew it was real. I knew that we were going in. By the time that Pearl and London and I were photographed for the cover of some baby magazine whose name I can't remember, I was totally into it. That photo shoot wasn't the cover of Cream or Rolling Stone, but I was pretty excited. We'd hit the big time on the baby circuit, and I was just proud. Being a parent has its moments where you find yourself doing what you are doing. But this new little person who has integrated themselves into your life, who's just there. Kids became a part of your everyday existence so instinctually and so naturally, and before you know it, they're there. And you can't remember what life was like when they weren't. My boys are 3 and 5, and I've started catching myself at least once or twice a day, realizing how fast they are changing and growing. It's a constant reality check. How can it not be? When your 4-year-old stands in front of you and defiantly argues like you're both equals, how can you not ask yourself, is this happening? And when negotiating with a 4-year-old? Yes, and we do not negotiate with terrorists. I wouldn't have it any other way. Pearl and I made beautiful kids, and our personalities are so strong in them that it's entertaining to us. They are definitely a product of their parents, and in fact, they're a mirror of their parents. They are both defiant, yet sweet. Well, from beginning to end, it took us about a year, but that's because I incorporated other books, because reasons. Who was the first one to interrupt the flow on that? I think it might have been the Elvira book, but reading about the sexual exploits of a 16-year-old female, some being borderline rapey, it was kind of like, I don't know. I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in for another glorious Books and Bourbon. I will be on tomorrow for a Bobby Ross Wednesday, probably doing more cardboard cutout stuff, but in the meantime, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. I appreciate you. I love you. You know who you are. Anyways, I'll see you guys around 8:30, 9 o'clock Central tomorrow, Wednesday. Have a good night. We will start the new book. Oh, next week. We're going to work on Killing the Legends. Killing the Legends? Killing the Legends. The lethal danger of celebrity. 'Cause reasons. Anyways, thanks so much for tuning in, guys. I appreciate you. I'll talk at you tomorrow.